Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Design Recharge. I'm your host, Diane Gibbs, and this is episode, I believe, 278. And I'm really excited to have everybody. I'm really excited to have Brad, and I'm excited to announce, so I'm putting up, I want to tell you about two things real quick at the beginning of the show, and then I'll tell you again at the end. It's kind of like sponsorships. These are affiliates that I have. And so these are two products that I use all the time. So I use the Divi to build websites. It's completely customizable. So I'm going to share with you this link. So if you go to bit.ly/Diane, one N, Diane, loves Divi, Divi. So to me, this is a great product. It's $250 for a lifetime. And I'm going to put it in the chat. There's the other thing I use. Since 2010, I've listened to Audible audiobooks. I've listened to audiobooks at the library before. And the library gives it to you for 2 weeks, which I think is great if you just want to do the library. But I really do like doing the Audible. It's $14.95 for a subscription, and I get a new book a month. I don't know if you use Audible. Do you ever use Audible, Brad?
I don't, but I really wish I did. We do lots of long drives, and I feel like it'd be awesome to have.
Well, so to me, and if I'm walking my dog or I'm at the gym or wherever, I'll listen to a book. And I can listen to a book much better than I can read it. I'm a really slow reader. So I really like, and then if it's somebody like, there was this book I was talking about last week, she talked really slow, so I had to listen to it in 1.25 because it was just too slow. It was like normal speed at 1.25. But that's kind of like what I like. I also like that at the library, I can't take notes on those books and those, unless I'm writing them. And sometimes I'm driving or I can't. So one thing I love about Audible is that I can take an audio note in that, and then it's saved forever. So it's always in my book. So if I am reading a book that's really specific and I'm going back and I want to go back and listen to something, or they're talking about a quote or something that I really like, it clips it right there, which I think is really cool. So anyway, we have a ton of people here. I just wanted to tell you about the Audible. And the Audible, you'll get, if you sign up, you get 2 free links. Books, 2 free books. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Links to books.
Yeah, 2 free books. So if you try Audible, you can get 2 free books. And this is just my affiliate link, and it's bit.ly/Design Recharge. And the D and the R are capitalized. I'm not sure if it matters. But anyway, so for everybody else, I think we've had a bunch of other people come in. If you're new to Design Recharge, this is kind of how it works. You can chat it up in the chat. You can type to other people. Please let us know where you're coming in from. I know we've got a bunch of people here already, but that's the beauty of, this is why I like Design Recharge, that we're doing this live, and that you guys might have a question that you want to ask Brad. And so then I'm going to make sure we get those questions done. So Brian coming in from Lawrence, Kansas. Brian also uses the Divi to build his sites. It's grid-based. You guys will really like it if you try it. For $250, it's really, really cheap. For forever, you get to put it on as many websites as you want. Okay, never mind. Brian's using something else now, but he is my go-to to figuring things out. Michael's here from Houston. Brian's still using the Divi. Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you, so I was trying to do things so that I'm getting stuff so that you guys can help keep Design Recharge alive and help me be able to bring you some new content. So, this is Brad Woodard. I have loved Brad's work for a while, and he is somebody who really taps into, I can taste, I can smell, I can feel your illustrations. And so I think the texture, I think all that, but you really do bring back a lot of childhood for me. And I think it's just, there's life, and I love your color palettes. You use limited color palettes so well. And then you do a lot of stuff with typography. I had such a good time doing the project thing with Dustin, the mid-century, I don't even workshop, I guess.
We call it a master class, but it's a workshop. Yeah, it's a live workshop.
So it was online, so we could do it from wherever we were. And you had people from all over the world, Australia, all over. So one thing, I had a great time when I talked to Brad last week or the week before last, just getting kind of his backstory. So I want you to kind of give us, 5-minute, 10-minute backstory, because you started in one place, you're doing infographics, and now look what you're doing, and you were working for other people. And I think sometimes you really learned a lot of things over the journey that have really impacted your business and how you run your business, or how you bid out for things, or the prices you bid out, because things that you learned. So can you and Crystal, your wife, have a business together called Brave the Woods.
Yes.
And you guys met in college, and the two of you have been moving. You were in Seattle area, I guess, right?
Yeah. Bellevue, Seattle. Yeah.
Okay. And then you went to Southern California or San Diego-ish area, right?
Oh, yeah. We were in Newport Beach, California. So Southern California. And then, yes, after which we moved to Boston, Massachusetts. And yes, we drove to all these places. We did not fly to any of these. We drove all our stuff ourselves. So we did the Boston, Massachusetts, and then from Boston we moved to Austin, Texas, and then Austin, Texas, we moved to Boise, Idaho, is where we live now. We've lived here for a little over a year now.
Okay, and then you also, in this transition, so to me that's really big moves. It wasn't like just from Georgia to Alabama. You went all the way across the country, up, down, left, right.
Yes.
And I think you learned something about our industry. I think people were using you for different things, but one thing that Brad's always been able to do is keep some of these clients that he left. He was still able to do work with them, which that is a testament to you as an employee, but you also as a person to work with, and a great illustrator, and somebody they can count on. So, little bit. So you graduated, you went to school for design. Is that correct?
That's right. Well, I ended up graduating with a degree in graphic design. I did not go to school for design because I didn't know I wanted to do that. I went to school thinking I was going to be a fine artist, and quickly realized that pool of talent was much larger in college than it was in high school. So all of a sudden I was like, oh my goodness, there's so many more people are better than I am. And it was a little overwhelming. Plus I didn't know how to make money doing fine art. And I didn't see a clear path to that. And so kind of the more rational side of me was like, okay, let's take design and something that I can make money off of it and make a career out of it. So that was the route I went. But now it's funny how I'm kind of going back and a lot more. I mean, it's commercial illustration, but I'm kind of tapping into my fine art side a lot more now, I find. So
in a way you get to do what you wanted to do in the beginning, but now you're able, you understand the business part and you're able to make money. Just a random question that wasn't on the list, I know, but was either of your parents entrepreneurs?
My mom was, in a way. So she did, she's an entrepreneur in the way that it's funny because she didn't make it big in terms of like financial, and the financial side of things. But she was always making extra money for our family growing up because she's an artist herself. And so she's like a very, very talented, basically anything she touches or any sort of like creative outlet you could think of, if she gets into it, she's all of a sudden really, really good at it. Mm-hmm. So she started quilting, and then she started sewing, and she started doing, she did painting, she can draw, she can make she's just really good at anything she touches. So she's always creating and always, selling it or teaching classes, kind of like what I'm ending up doing now. Mm-hmm. But she did it with just a passion for doing it. She didn't try to make it like a full job. But yeah, I did learn that kind of put like grinding away at that side of things and really trying to make your passion work for you and be something that you could keep doing throughout your life. And so she still does it. She still teaches classes and retreats. And yeah, she's a big motivator for me.
That's awesome. Okay. So how about Crystal's parents? Are either one of them? Cause so Crystal is more of the business side in the Brave the Woods, and she's also a writer. So did she come from a family of entrepreneurs? Because you both, so in his path after Boston, you moved to Austin, and in Austin is when you started totally Brave the Woods.
Yeah, we actually quit our jobs in Boston to go start Brave the Woods in Austin. Okay. Mainly because she said, hey, she went to Austin at one point for like a journalist retreat or a conference or something like that, a journalism conference. And I remember her coming back. She was only there, I think it was even during Halloween. So she didn't have like the best, like, didn't get to like really see too much of the town except for like the craziness that was happening during Halloween. But she came back from that trip. I remember we were in college, married. And she's like, if we ever, or when we start, she's not if, she said, when we start our own business, because that was kind of a plan a long time ago. She said, when we start our own business, she's like, we are starting it in Austin, Texas. And I was like, sure, I don't know anything about Austin. It sounds kind of cool from what you said. And then I still knew nothing when we moved in from Boston, but she was like, wait, we're doing our own thing, right? And I was like, yeah, we're starting our own business. And she's like, we're going to Austin. I was like, all right. So that's where that came from.
So that was 2012, right?
That was like more 2013. I started working on Brave the Wiz right before, but we launched it. I mean, we officially left our jobs 2013.
Okay, so I want you to kind of take people through. So you worked from Seattle in school. You did like an internship or something.
Yeah, because we were in school in Rexburg, Idaho. We went to BYU, Idaho. Yes, there is a BYU, Idaho. There's a BYU, Hawaii, and there's a BYU, Provo. The one everybody knows is the BYU in Utah. But yeah, we were in the Idaho one. And then we both had internships. She had one in Bellevue, and I had one in, I want to say it was Monroe. But yeah, it's all around that area.
So then from the internship, you got a job, or to kind of take us through your kind of career, because you kind of went through that really quick for me, but it was in a good way, because I think you had some key points of things that you learned by working that helped you now.
Yeah. So the internship wasn't one that, it wasn't the experience I thought I would get out of it. The guy who ran the business was a family friend of ours. I couldn't get an internship for my life. Like I had a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet of 60 plus companies that I had written out. I'd like planned out the ones I wanted to apply to for an internship. And I contacted all 60 of them, and I only heard, and I heard back from a handful of them, but the only one that answered me was the one that was related to our family. So it is important who you know. Not related, just a friend of the family. And so we ended up, he ran his own studio, and it was him and another couple actually. And it's just just them three running this small business. And they did a lot of design layout for like auto ads, like the classifieds, and also like a local magazine, like a one that you get in the mail that tells you kind of what's going on in your little city, and family oriented, and had lots of advertisements and stuff and coupons. So it wasn't like high design by any means. And I was sitting next to I was like pushed off in the side. There wasn't a lot of room in that building. So I like sat next to the microwave, and there's always popcorn being popped. So I always smell like popcorn, and I'm sure I got some sort of disease from that microwave. I was like, get that microwave away from me. I could feel it. It's just like right next to my head the whole time. But I remember being there, and I was like, this isn't like the best experience. I was so expecting, like, I applied to like Pentagram and IBM Design, or not IBM Design, BMW Design Works. And it was like all these huge companies that I wanted to go to and that I've toured before with my classes. And then I ended up here. He was an awesome guy, but the problem was that I noticed was he put all of his eggs in one basket. And so what happened, and that was one of the biggest things I learned from, was a lot of things he taught me a lot about design, but also just learning that, you don't keep all those clients. If you have one big client that's 70% of your business, it's super sketchy moving forward. And ultimately, he actually had to close the doors, and he works for another company now. But it was just funny how I got out of an internship. I got a lot out of it, but it wasn't like what I thought it was. It wasn't all this positive stuff that I thought. But now, starting my own business, it's really, really helped. So that was what we did. That was my internship, and that internship didn't lead to any work necessarily. We came back to school in Idaho, and I applied for, again, got the lit spreadsheet out. This is my wife's doing. She's list organizations. It's funny. I say I did it. She actually did it, and I was just giving her names, and she was figuring out companies as well for me. But that one was probably like 100 plus names of companies. Reached out to all of them. Didn't hear back from any of them. And I was just like, I don't even know how to get a job. So I'd been doing freelance work. This is during the time when, like you said, infographics were really big. And I was doing freelance work for a company called Column 5. And I just remember, doing these things. I mean, I was doing it for nothing. It's crazy how much goes into those things, and they paid freelancers so little. And it was not just them; it was everybody at that time. And so I was like, I need to get a full, maybe I can talk to them, you know? And so I kind of reached out to them and gave them, you know, a heads up that, you know, like I'd like to do, kind of saying I kind of want to do more. I'd like, maybe I'm graduating soon, kind of hinting towards the fact that maybe you could offer me something more or more freelance work. But it ended up being that we didn't hear anything back from anybody. So right after our graduation, we were dirt poor, but we got some money for graduation, obviously, from family and friends. And so we took that money and we drove to Southern California from Idaho like 2 days after we graduated, and came back. And we already said we were done with our lease on our apartment because we were like, well, whatever, we're going to move regardless. I'm not sure where we're moving, but we're going to move. Might be in with my parents or her parents. I'm not sure. But we drove down to California, and then I basically kind of showed up at Column 5, and I was like, hey, remember how we talked about maybe getting a job or working more? Well, I'm here now, and I don't have any money to get back, really. Like, and so like we're graduated, our lease is over. It would be nice to have a job, so put them on the spot. They were like, okay, we'll get back to you in a few weeks. I was like, well, I kind of need it in like a couple hours. We have to, like, I don't know. I literally have to know now. So they told us just to go. Like, it was right across the street from the beach, which was awesome. So like, go out. So we just walked on the beach, and then we'll give you a call. And sure enough, they called back a couple hours later, an hour later, and we're like, okay, we can offer you this. And it was really low because they were a startup, and I was like, whatever, we're going. So we drove straight back to Idaho, and then drove back to California with all our stuff, and that's how I got my first job.
And so then how long was that position? How long did you keep that position?
I stayed for a year, just over a year, and then we financially couldn't do it anymore. And I mean, they were kind enough to help give us a raise, but still wasn't enough. We just had a kid, our oldest, and we were living in Newport Beach area, and it was just so expensive.
Right. So it's kind of like you stepped into one of the most expensive states, definitely, to live in, right? Mm-hmm. When you stepped right out, but in a way you learned, and now, I mean, because that's where you started, was the first mm-hmm. financial decision. You weren't thinking about it, really. You were just happy. You
just wanted a job.
Right. Just wanted a job.
A salary. Never had a salary. Yeah.
Right. And so now and we'll get to this in a second, but when you moved from Austin to Boise, mm-hmm. it was mainly a financial move as well, right?
It was,
okay, so then you go from Newport Beach to Boston. Right?
Yeah, I got a call from Arnold Worldwide. They're a major advertising firm there. And I just remember them, I think I got an email from them when it was about a year up that I'd been working at Column 5. And they're like, hey, we're really interested in your work. We like what we've seen online, and we'd like to fly you out for an interview or whatever if you're interested. And they didn't. I was like, oh, I really liked working for Column 5. If you don't know them, look them up. They're awesome. They're a lot bigger now. They're now in New York. They have the offices in New York and in California. And the owners I'm great friends with. And so that was a really awesome experience. And so I was really liking. It was I was hire number 15, and we were working like this cool, like they just got into a new space, and it was really fun. So it's kind of hard. Those are definite perks, like how casual it was and how fun and exciting the work was. But I was done doing infographics, and I was also really, really getting poorer and poorer by the moment. And so when they offered that and advertise, like at Arnold, they kind of gave us a range of where they would be financially, you know, what my salary might be. And I was like, okay, sure, send me over right now. And so I went over.
So and just to kind of give people, I didn't have to share your numbers, but you gave them a number that you thought was just astronomical. You were like, I'm just gonna, because you were having fun. But I think also the stuff you learned at Column 5 was also some things that you brought back to you and Crystal working. You want to make sure that you're working and having fun in your environment. You can just tell by all the toys behind you that right? you may not be across the street from the beach anymore, but there's still sort of that atmosphere. You knew that was something that was important for you. So
a lot of friends there. I really like the people there. But,
right, and you like Crystal, right?
And now, I love Crystal, and I love my kids, and my dogs are laying around here somewhere.
Okay, so you go to Boston, you give them this, what you think, but you still didn't maybe do your research on what maybe cost of living was in Boston and
Yeah.
What
Well,
maybe
I'm sure
go to
my
that?
wife, it's funny because like my wife did, but it was just funny thinking like, you never know, even if you like do the breakdown, somehow it's always different when you move there. You're like, oh, but like milk costs this much more than, just like little things add up that you just don't think about. And so we did like, when I say we, my wife, again, she did all of the research and like, okay, can we make this work? What's the salary we need? But yeah, so I set a much higher salary than what I was getting. And I didn't know if it was even possible. And now looking back on it, really wasn't that much. But for the spot I was in my career, I feel like it was fair. But I just didn't know. And so we kind of spit out this price. And I just remember coming back and they were kind of like, okay, now they took the top of so I gave them kind of a range, which I hate doing, but I gave them like a range. And they took that as the base. Like my top, they took it as the base and added 15 grand more or something like that. And they said like, oh, so you're looking for this. And I was like, yes, I'm looking for that. It was definitely not what I had said before. They added more. And I was like, sure, yeah, that works. And so that was, and it's funny because like people are like, oh, so you're like, are they really calculated decisions where all these places you went? And they kind of were, but sometimes it's like necessity. We just had a kid. We were in debt for getting groceries. We were so poor. I was loving my job, which is a huge thing. But at some points in your career, you have to make those decisions. And mine was to get financial stability for my family for a little bit, pay off that debt. And so we moved there, and it's like a foreign country. If you're from the West Coast moving to the East Coast, it is so different culturally. Even just within the industry, it's very different too. And so it was a huge move for us, and there's a lot to love about Boston. We just went back last fall, my wife and I, just for a trip, and drove around, and it's just beautiful. But it was really hard to get used to, and I know inside the ad world is even a crazier world. Then add that to the East Coast, like everybody's kind of shut off from everybody else, or very direct and harsh. And I was used to, hey man, like
Right.
let's just chat. Like whoever's on the street, you can chat with anybody. Or and so in like the culture inside design firms was a lot more relaxed and easygoing. So it was a big change. But yeah, I like to tell people that it wasn't. I did look into the company, and it looked pretty cool from the outside looking in, do my interview, but like a big decision was really financial at that point. I think that's why I didn't last very long there either, because that was my decision.
So but one thing you saw there that you talked to me about the other day was you were like, whoa, these freelancers, we're still pulling in freelance illustration.
Yeah.
We're getting freelancers to do, they're not in-house, they're not getting me to do these illustrations, and they're paying them like when you have that art director's hat on, you see what they're paying and you're like, whoa, they're getting, I guess it's kind of like when you buy a font and it's $9 and then you buy a Futura or something and it's like $590 or $2,000 for the full family. It's kind of like that. And you just had no idea. You thought a font was $9, right? So can you kind of, because that to me seemed like one of the big kind of aha moments for you, when you realize, whoa, I can actually make more freelancing.
Yeah, it was really eye-opening to me because I just didn't realize, because I'd then been working in-house. So I did freelance and I didn't get paid that money. That's the thing. Like when I was in college getting paid freelance, $200 to make a full like infographic that took me 2 weeks, and so I wasn't, in my mind, there was no connection to like making lots of money freelancing.
Right.
And so when I was working, I was working in-house and I was like, well, this is much safer. I'm getting a salary, all that stuff. But when I was at Arnold, I noticed like, yeah, I can move up. There's also more responsibility. There's more like time that I have to dedicate to work and be away from my family, which I didn't want to sacrifice. I mean, I did while I was there, but a year of it wasn't sitting well with me, and that wasn't like a sacrifice I was willing to make. Right. And so, but yeah, so looking at that, then I heard how much they were paying other people for like these contractors that we were working with. And I was doing a lot of in-house stuff, but I was also doing stuff for the brands. But it was just like when they wanted something special, like the really fun projects. I just remember like being on a phone call with me, the art director and the creative director, then on the call, on the other end of the call was the contractor, the illustrator for this project. And I was sitting there kind of confused because I was like, man, this guy's their demeanor was very different when they were talking to him. Like they were much more respectful. They were letting him call a lot of the shots. They were saying like, we're deferring to your style. They were saying, yeah, and they kept like they mute him and be like, yes, he's charging a lot of money. He's really good, but it's so worth it. Blah, blah. And then they go back and talk to him. And it's like, okay, but they don't ever talk that way to me. They did in my interview they were trying to hire me. And when I got there, it was more, like, okay, I need this done by this point. Like it was just very like rushed, and it was like, they already had a meeting about this concept. Now you just need to make it look good. And I was like, that's not what I wanted to be. I wanted to be in on the, the conception of the idea. I didn't want to just sit here and like dress it up after you've already done the meetings. And so, but they were letting these other contractors be in on those meetings. And I was like, that just doesn't make sense to me. And it was just hard for me to kind of reconcile that difference. So when I heard more and more prices coming in, I was like, if I just did 2 projects for these people, it would be like half my salary or whatever. It's just kind of crazy, So that was a big motivator for me to work on my own. And I felt a little more confident having worked in advertising and worked in that startup and having worked in a small design agency in-house. All those experiences really helped shape my confidence level. And I was like, okay, I feel like I know I could talk to these people. I know the lingo. And yeah, it was still early. I mean, I only worked on my own out of college for 2 years before starting Brave the Woods.
All right. So you worked at Column 5 and then for a year, and then you worked at Arnold for a year?
Yeah. A year is pretty much my threshold for pain. I found out like, okay, something, not pain. I shouldn't say that, 'cause they were awesome jobs, but it was just like, I can't sit here and do the same thing over and over and over again. I want the variety of my choosing, and I want to be able to pick the projects I want. And that's how I've been able to do this for 5 years. So.
Yay, for 5 years. So,
Yep.
So I want you to kind of take us through that conversation that you and Crystal had, because you both quit your jobs and you moved to Austin. And how, because I think a lot of people are at that stage. Maybe did you have a lot of freelance you were still doing? Because I know you were still doing some work for Column 5, having good relationships with these people. You thought maybe you could have maybe continue to do some work for Arnold, possibly. So can you kind of take us through that decision-making process and what that looked like?
Yeah, it was. So it wasn't like this easy situation too. Like I thought for sure, you kind of think you'd be so prepared that you would be like, okay, this is the point when I'm ready to just go off and start my own thing. Like I feel like a lot of people do that too, where it's just like the stars have to literally align before I do this. And then that's why a lot of times we just kind of sit and don't do anything because things have to be perfect, or I have to have this much saved up. And yes, those are good things, but there's never going to be a perfect time. I mean, those are things you can do to prevent kind of, what do you call that? Not damage control, but just like lessen your risk. And so, and those are important to do, but it seems like it's just never the perfect. It's always a leap. No matter what you do, it's always going to be a leap of faith. And so for me and Crystal, we'd been building up this freelance side, working with Column 5, like you said. But even like when I was working with Column 5, I was building up outside work, doing a lot of illustration, where and that was kind of cool because I started incorporating a lot more illustration in my design work at Column 5. And then I started getting freelance work because I was posting it online. I was running a blog, just getting my work out there and trying to get myself involved in the design community.
Like how many hours? Because I think people, or how much money were you able to make, like a percentage? Because I think some of it has to be you're paying off debt, but then you also have to kind of set yourself up to have enough client work that's coming in that's going to be able to pay for the life that you want to be living.
Yeah, that's the hard part, right? You just don't know, because you're like, even though I'm making this, let's say I made that much, this X amount this past year, I don't know if that's gonna be the same amount I make next year. That's the instability part, right, of running your own business. And so you try to lessen that risk by either just getting a whole lot more work and never saying no, which is dangerous, which I did at the beginning. So that's what I started at. I was just saying yes to every single project, and I was staying up all night. I was working all day, and then I came home, ate dinner, and stayed up all night working on freelance work. And so, yeah, it was a it like gradually got bigger. By the time I went to leave Arnold, I felt confident in the fact that I was making enough money, almost enough money to like run my own business. But then Skillshare kicked in, and we can talk about that in a second. But Skillshare is really what put us over the edge, where we felt like we were confident enough that in terms of money that was coming in constantly, and it wasn't as like dependent on a client. It was more passive income.
Right. So you had started that egg basket. You had started to develop another basket so that it wasn't all in one. So how did the Skillshare thing, that was when you were in Boston, you created that?
Yeah. I joined Skillshare when I was working at Arnold in Boston.
Okay. So again, you have one kid or two kids at the time?
We have one kid still.
Okay. One kid. Your Crystal's still working too.
Yeah. So she wanted to be, she's funny because she definitely wants to be a stay-at-home mom, but she's also the type that's like wants to work all the time. So she's like not like eternal struggle, right? She's like, I want to be home and I want to make sure that. So we ended up, now we're both home, but yeah. So she was doing like a lot of online work, like remote work. So she was doing stuff for like grading textbooks, science textbooks, which she absolutely dreaded. And I was like, she was really anxious to start Brave the Woods. But yeah, she was doing things like that online. So, but yeah.
Okay, so this was really I do think it really needs to be a decision you make as a couple, especially if if you're both going to be doing this. But I think this is one of the things that makes this such a neat relationship, is that she really has her things that she does, and you really don't know a ton about that. You're like, she just tells me what to do and I do it. And then you have your stuff that you get her opinion and you guys are talking, but it's really, she knows what you do really well, and you know what she does really well. And you don't try to necessarily, maybe you did in the beginning, you tried to cross those lines a little bit, but then
we did. We found out real quick that wasn't going to work.
But then you figured it out that really it was like, it's about trust. It's about faith in the other person. And so to me, one of the questions I asked as kind of a prompt to this episode was, could you work at home? Because sometimes that would be too much for some people. They need more interaction. Or could you work with your spouse? And I don't know if I could work with my spouse full time, to be honest. I think it would be, but I think it really does have to have a full trust. Not that my husband doesn't trust me or I don't trust him, but I just think that sometimes you have the alignment is just off. And so
different kind of trust. It's a different kind of trust. I find
it is. Yeah. So hey,
you can trust that they're going to stay with you and never cheat on you. That you can trust that they're going to be parents to your kids. That's totally different than you can trust their opinion about like who this character is in this movie on Netflix. Like that's like, I'm just like, no, that is totally this character. And you're like, no, it totally looks like so-and-so. Those kind of things, that happens in your work stuff. That's a separate kind. It's not an emotional, that's your business or whatever.
But it's about trusting her that she knows where to market your work best. Or just like even in the beginning, when she was making that list in Excel for places for you to try to, you trusted her to look, but you were also doing some on your own. You were telling her where to go. But then in that, you're kind of learning. And so I feel like that's such a really neat relationship. And you've really kind of let you don't necessarily really dig in so much about the business stuff. She tells you what to do and you do it. And you may ask a question, but you're totally behind her. She's put in the time to do it. And she knows the same thing about you as well, right? That you've put in.
For sure. Well, it's hard because, there's no way you can, this is just like this is just a great, great advice for business in general. You can't sit there, you're never going to expand your business if you're doing everything that only you can do and everything that anybody else could do. You're cutting into that time of doing stuff that only you can do. So with having my wife here, like we're both doing that, right? So she's like, okay, the stuff that I don't feel comfortable doing, the thing I'm best at, I'm going to focus on. The thing that I'm best at, I'm going to focus on. And so she takes over a lot of the emails and she deals with the client initially. She'll do the contract. She'll do all of that stuff, the invoicing.
Plus all the stuff that we don't want to do.
No, but she's so organized and she's so good at it. And it's funny because that's not her background, but she's just she's very, very intelligent. So anything that she picks up, again, she can do. And so And it may not be the most fun thing. And down the road, we're planning on getting somebody that can do that for her. And then we're going to pass that along, and she's just going to focus on writing our children's books and maybe focusing more on the marketing stuff that she really likes to do. So you can't do it all at once, but gradually we've started, making those divisions of and things that we can't do, we start hiring at. We hired an accountant, and we started doing things like that, or like a payroll services, all this kind of stuff to help you out, but and to help, and not only just to help us stay in our own lanes, but to help us grow, because now I can focus all my time and energy on making what I do and only I can do better. Right.
Okay. So you guys made this decision. It was really the Skillshare. It was the amount of money that you were bringing in from that other income stream that allowed you to move and allowed you to kind of set up Brave the Woods.
Yes.
Okay. And you kind of knew what percentage or how much money you needed to be making, whether that was coming from freelance or from retainer client, however people are doing it. But one thing I think was really important was that it was passive, right?
Yeah. And you can see past trends was important for us. So that's one thing when you're looking at like your freelance work, if you don't have people on retainer where you can say, I know I'm going to make exactly this amount of money each month, which we didn't have at that point. We just had constant clients that we just knew would always be coming back around this time of the year, or just like we just knew that we're getting, and we can kind of tell the frequency of emails and new project inquiries that were coming in each week. Right. Like we were saying, okay, we got 2 or 3 a week that were coming in, and so if we could say yes to all those, and we could pay for things. Eventually, we wanted to be able to say no to most of them, and then that's where we're at now, where we're turning down a bunch, which is nice. It's a great place to be. But yeah, just knowing how the frequency of those project inquiries was really important. So we're like, okay, if we could kind of gauge by that, we know when the slow months are, we know like the holidays pick up, and so anyway, we just kind of mapped that out, and that helped us make a decision too. So you may not see it all there, but to less, like, you may not see exactly like a set amount coming in your like for sure income, but we can kind of gauge from the past. But also when we saw that too, we're like, okay, but we also need something else. And so the supplemental income, which was the passive income that we did with Skillshare, that was really what helped us feel completely secure. And we're like, okay, at least we know we're going to get at least this much each month. And so that put us over.
And that was early on. You were one of the first Skillshare teachers.
I was one of the first one of the first Skillshare teachers, but mostly, more specifically, I was one of the first, like, they started dividing out all the classes into schools. Before, it was just like anything you wanted to teach was in there, but mostly it was like business and things like that. But they hadn't really done a design and illustration portion, so they started breaking down to what they called schools, and I was the first in that group. So I had the first, like, teaching Adobe Illustrator. I was the first teacher to do that, which was really the biggest success, and that's the one that still I make a lot off of.
And Skillshare actually changed their, I have another friend who has taught on Skillshare and was on early. They actually changed the contract. I don't know if they were bought out or what, but so she was able to make a lot more money in the beginning than she was maybe now, but it still is an income stream, right? Mm-hmm. So it may not be as much, because I think they were really not making any money in the beginning contracts. I don't know.
They were giving out a lot because they wanted to, they just hadn't figured out that ratio, right? Like, didn't know how much they're going to spend on marketing and pushing individuals. So now they do market mine a little bit. It's because I'm in the top 1%. So now they've kind of divvied it out, like, oh, these are like the master creators or whatever. And and so we'll if you want to be part of the club, you still have to, like, put out classes every 3 months, and then we'll make sure to, like, market it for you and stuff like that. And they're really encouraging, and they have awesome people helping out. I love Skillshare. I loved Skillshare at the beginning. I love Skillshare now. I really didn't like it in the middle, but that was their growing pains, and they just weren't very transparent. And so there was a lot that they had to work through, and they've made those changes. So I trust them now. I definitely trust them again.
But just to let people know, I mean, you have to apply to be a teacher. If you do get, I don't know if you, because Brad was so early in it, he was able to kind of, and Dustin's talked about this a lot, you're kind of able to kind of steer, you're in the front of the ship, so people see you. It's timing, but it doesn't mean that you can't do this and make it. It just means that you are going to have to do more work, because if they might have been pushing Brad's content in their marketing, but now they wouldn't necessarily be finding yours and pushing it. So that a lot of it has to do with you. But it's just the same reason why Arnold got you, is because you were doing freelance and you were posting your work. So it's the same sort of thing. It's being out. You can't just be kind of hidden. And Jason Karn and I have had this conversation before, because he was super, super, super busy. It's the same thing. I think all of us kind of get in this place and we stop marketing for ourselves. And this can be the detriment of us, especially us as a solopreneur or a entrepreneurial venture, because a lot of things are NDAs, they're non-disclosure agreements, and you cannot share the thing. So how can you get around? You have to have some of those either personal projects or side projects that you're doing. So having some of this passive income is really critical for giving you the stability to be able to go kind of out on your own. I don't know. You just have to be on the right place, and you have to kind of vet things and try things and see if it's really going to work.
Yeah. Okay, and I lucked out with Skillshare. I really did luck out. Like, the timing was perfect. It's just like the first people that were on Twitter have 1 billion followers.
Right.
That really happened for me. But still, like, there's, like you said, there are a lot of people that jumped on later and they make a ton of money off of it. And more importantly, it's passive money, right? It's not that, even if you didn't make a ton, even if it was like $500 a month, that's $500 a month that you don't have to do anything for.
Right. That's a car payment.
Yeah. I mean, that's honestly, that's how you have to look at it. So it just makes sure that the amount of work that you put into it like matches that. But I mean, I found with Skillshare classes, they do take a lot of time to create and to make it right and to make it something that's engaging but once you do that and you put it out there, just having that extra income is super helpful. And you can do it in lots of different ways. But yeah, I like what you said, Diane, about if you don't have those things, it's like there are a lot of NDA type projects, or you can't share this for 2 years type of thing. That's super important to inject the like your passion projects, but making sure that work, not only is it like your passion, but it's work that it's just like, not only that it's just like fun and fun work, but it's also work that the type of work that you want to get. Mm-hmm. So I think that's important. So maybe you're working on a book, but you can't show it. Well, you can make another book and then show it, and then people will know that you make books. And that was kind of how I got a lot of the work I did. Was I had to put work in my portfolio that I wanted. That's really what it was. Is I had to make work that I wanted to get. And so once people saw that it was in there,
that means you had to schedule time into your day, your weekend, your night to do these other side projects of things that you wanted to do. And I think sometimes we run out of time. I think another thing is right now, the internet is still pretty new. Realistically, it's 22 years old, I guess.
Sure.
Is that right? I'm really terrible with math.
Somebody's going to Google it and hit us up on chat.
Anyway, I think it started like 96, 95-ish, it was happening. It was ugly as all get out. But anyway, but it's still, if you're talking about automotive industry, I mean, it's been happening 100 years. So anyway, as you're going, and you made relationships with people at Column 5, you've made relationships with Arnold, you moved to Texas. How do these relationships still play in? And then how do those people, maybe somebody at that company moved to somewhere else and now they're going to use you. So how is those, because I know this doesn't have to be a super long question, but I think it's really important to just, how did you make great impressions?
That's a good. So I'm going to go back. It's funny how much I quote my mom in here, and it's funny after she's like, I just want to see one of your live. She's never seen me speak or anything like that. And she actually does motivational speaking too. But she's never seen me speak. And so at one of these points, every time she's like, oh, how did it go? And I tell her, she's like, oh, I wish I was there. And she's like, you didn't say anything bad about me. I'm like, no, I always talk you up. But you'll hear that I mention my mom a lot because I'm a lot like my mom. And she literally talks to every single person. She's like, she's the type of person that really won't burn that bridge unless it's like a grocery store that didn't like honor her coupon or something like that. And she's like sworn them off forever. And then I didn't honor her rain check or whatever it was. I just remember Albertsons, I couldn't go there for years. Which now I go there. But yeah, it's just funny like how friendly she is, and how and it's to anybody, and not only she goes above and beyond like what you'd expect too. So she'll meet somebody, and if she meets you, there's a really good chance, even if she just met you for a second, that she will already have gotten your birth date, and she will send you a card on the holidays, on your birthday. She knows everybody at the post office. Like they all know who she is. Like, oh, Lynn's here, and tells her like she'll have this whole stack of things that she's always mailing out. And so I told him like she can't make money because all the money she makes from her stuff, she just buys things for everybody else and sends like cards and all sorts of gifts. So
that's the way she loves people.
She does, and she's service and giving, and so she's just awesome. But she is like the friendliest person you'll ever meet. So for me, I saw how that's benefited her, and I saw how like people just love anything that she does, even if people could have different opinions about her artwork, right? Like we all do, but they all just came. They didn't even care what she said she was going to make or what she was going to teach. People were like, oh, Lynn's teaching it, we're going to go to that class. Like I'm going to pay for that, or I'm going to buy that. And so I was like, I was really impressed by people's loyalty to her, because of the friendships that she's built. And so that's kind of stuck with me. And I'm really social like she is. And so, in the jobs that I made sure to never burn any bridges and just try to be, just friendly in general, but that's kind of rubbed off. And so my business, so I stay in touch with people. I'll continue emailing them, letting them know like, hey, congratulations on your new job. Like, how are the kids? Like just very genuine, but staying in touch with people and keeping those connections alive. I feel like a lot of the work that I've got outside of those full-time jobs came from just being on people's top of mind, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they're like, I'll reach out to somebody and be like, hey, I just, I hadn't talked to you in a long time, just was thinking of you, hope all's well. And then I'll get an email back like, well, like that's awesome, it's like perfect timing. We just have this project, and I didn't even think about it, but you'd be perfect for this. And that's honestly not the reason. It's not like my main driving reason, but it is one of them. Like in terms of a business aspect, like being top of mind is important, but it's also just kind of my personality that I just want to reach out and connect with people. And I found most of my work is just from people I know talking me up to somebody else, which is the best situation.
Right. So sometimes those are organic. Sometimes it's just like, I've done that to Doc plenty of times. I'll be like, oh, you just really have my mind. And I send them a text or something.
Yeah.
And so to me, I think it's just, that's natural. I think it's kind of being quiet in yourself to be able to think about who it is. But when somebody comes to your top of mind, then you reach out, and whether it's the right time or not, it still reminds them who you are.
Yeah.
I think that's a great kind of little marketing strategy, kind of plop it in here. Okay. So
and make it genuine. I think that's the biggest part of all of that. I mean, a lot of people can do that and be disingenuous, but like, be genuine and give like genuine compliments. If you're going to give people compliments and things like that, and like research it a little bit, look at what they've recently done, then comment on that and say like, when you're emailing them, say, hey, I was really impressed with that campaign that you came out with. Like that's way more genuine than just coming and being like, hey, like you guys have been doing awesome stuff. Like,
right.
You can always say that, right? Like, but if you pull out something very specific and leave a genuine comment, it means a lot more.
So one of the things that I think that's absolutely, and that may be as a kid, you were always watching your mom and you saw her do things like that, and then you just learned from example. Were you ever embarrassed of your mom because she was so chatty?
Yes. I still get embarrassed by mom. It's so funny because I'm so much like her, but I still get embarrassed by her. My wife and I. It's funny, and it's I think embarrassing the same way that I think all of us are with like just someone who calls attention to things that you may not want to call attention to. It's very positive. She will stop. Like we just like immediately just made me think of like we were in Boston and my parents came for Halloween and we were walking around and my kids were dressed up, in their costumes, and they're all homemade costumes that my wife had made. And my mom was like super proud, obviously, of them as her grandkids, but also my wife's making these costumes for them. And so we were walking around, and like we're like at a stop sign waiting to cross the street, and there's a bunch of people there. And she's like, "Oh, did you guys know that she made this? Like, she made all their costumes, and they're so cute and all that." That kind of stuff like embarrasses me because like I'm all for like being outgoing, but on my terms.
Right.
So, it's like, anyway, it's just kind of funny. Like, I don't like being the center of attention unless I'm like the one like supposed to be, like it was
Right.
scheduled that I was supposed to be the attention.
It wasn't random people at a stoplight.
Exactly. And so I definitely, she does do that, but it's all coming from a good place. But yeah, she's the biggest, like, obviously fan of everything that I do. And so I kind of have to let that go. But as a kid, yeah, it was embarrassing because she's always talking to people being like, did you know, like, he just got did the best job on his project at school. And I'm like, Mom, they don't care, just stop.
Right.
But then they do care, because then later on she's like sending him, like, we have him over for dinner like a week later, so it worked. It's just embarrassing.
All right, so when you're nurturing these relationships, you do this just as it comes, even though Crystal's really the marketing person, you're still doing this stuff. When somebody comes to mind, you reach out, or when you see that they did a cool project, or you see they got a new job or a new title or something, you're doing that as well. So there's some stuff that's coming straight from you, and then there's some stuff that Crystal's doing.
Yeah.
How often, you may or may not know this question, but this is why I sent them to you early. Maybe you could have gotten these from Crystal.
Sure.
How often are y'all reaching out to potential clients or previous clients and agencies that you worked with?
We don't do it nearly enough. We actually, so we have lots of and I think this is a question you had later, but we could talk about it then. But we do lots of meetings, like my wife and I. We do planning meetings just like you would like any job. And so we'll schedule those out. We'll get a babysitter. We'll go to like a coffee shop and sit down and plan out the next quarter or whatever. And that's usually when we're like, okay, we need to reach out to so-and-so. So like quarterly, it seems to be like, we'll do like this kind of push, or even sometimes it's like, our biggest push is like once a year during like Christmas, and we'll send out something. That's usually if we tend to do a lot more reaching out when we don't have a lot of work. So a couple of years ago, that's what happened, and we were reaching out to everybody. So it was like all hands on deck, try to reach out to everybody that we knew, and try to find new ways to get work. Instead of like contacting companies directly, I really don't like cold calling companies all that often. I like to find people that work there and start following them for a while. And like find a project manager or not project, like an art director or a creative director, and try to find out who they are. Like you can do that through LinkedIn. Start following them on Twitter for a little bit, and then try and make sure that you've been following them and commenting before I reach out. But a lot of times just having that on the radar and being like, and then you can kind of say like, hey, I've been following you for a while, and I can honestly say I've been following you for a while, and talk to them, and then I'll reach out to them. But like building, it takes a little bit more time, but it's a lot more genuine. And we don't really do like this big push. It's like reaching out and doing cold calling a ton. We'll definitely be the more discreet reaching out to people and trying to make connections, and just hope that turns into something. And a lot of times it does.
But I think it's kind of like you've been at the same party, or you've been going to the same parties or the same school or whatever, but now you're fine. And you've seen, and your name is recognizable to these people. And now you started different conversations. Sometimes the cold call is the direct message from somebody who's asking you to, promote this toothpaste or something. And you're like, what? I can't use that toothpaste.
Why would I even do it? I do design stuff, right? We get that all the time now.
Right. Yeah. So there's also another portion, because I think, I don't know if it's you and Crystal or if it's mainly Crystal, but it's also about doing more of that passive income and having partnerships, because you've been able to do some really neat things with Dustin through partnerships. So can you talk about that a little bit? Because again, that started from a relationship.
Yeah.
Right. And then now this is also passive income, but it's also something that you're continually growing. You just did the workshop or masterclass, which was great. And so those are things that are those are passive. That's passive, but then you will continue to do more and more of these.
Yeah, it's totally right. That's how we do it. It's still relationship based, and I feel like anytime we've tried to start businesses with other people, with friends, and it's just failed miserably. Like starting business, and the only one that I'd probably take a leap with now is, I guess I also didn't know them as well, like professionally. We were just friends, and we tried to start something. See, I think it's easier when you've been professionally working together, which is what Dustin and I have been doing. And we have some big plans ahead for next year, potentially making a company together, which would be cool. But yeah, it all based off relationship. And Dustin's been a really good one because he was a big fan of my Skillshare classes and a lot of the stuff that we'd created. We kind of were building up our companies at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And we both have very different strengths. And so, which is again, like how it works really well with my wife and I. Dustin and I have very different strengths and he's super talented at what he does. And so working together benefits us both. And we get to stay in our own lanes too, which is nice.
And you both have the same poster behind you, because when you're doing
so funny.
that logo, I mean, there's so many. You have the same chair, right? You both have the IKEA chair. It was so.
He always is wearing my hat, and I think we both are wearing Lenny Terenzi's like "Hey Monkey" shirts. Like, yeah, we have a lot in common. Yes.
So I think some of that has to do with commonalities. I think that's one of the skills, one of your superpowers is the relational work, is that you're finding commonalities, but you also really know what makes you tick. And I think that some people, that's been, that's where I see students struggle, is when they're trying to kind of play in a lot of different courts. And maybe stylistically they don't have something that is just there. We have 4 minutes now, so we are not we'll have to do a part 2, Brad, because there's way too many questions, but
that's all right. I talk a lot, I'm sorry.
No, this was great. So you said that you kind of sit down and map out goals for the business, and you do it on a quarterly basis. I'm just reiterating. At the beginning of the year, do you do something? So there's the feast or famine, right? And when you're in famine, you're like, reach out, then you get a ton of work all at once. So is that sort of more of where Crystal kind of feeds it? So we're going to do this now. This may be, I mean, she's also knowing what your work schedule is, but y'all also have some personal projects, some books that you're making and other things that you guys are working on, just the two of you together. And those kind of are part of that plan, because sometimes those personal projects get to be things that you can promote. Right?
Yeah. And the biggest thing I think about personal projects, like we always say, like, I don't have time to do it, but you honestly do have time if you schedule it in like a project. You just treat it like an actual paid project. And if you don't do that, you don't plan out milestones, you don't give yourself an actual deadline, you don't hold yourself accountable. You're never going to finish, and you're always going to be like, I just don't have time. But you did, because you sat down and did watch Netflix for a little bit. Sometimes and that's fine. Like everybody needs to watch Netflix a little bit and just de-stress a bit. And I get that. But for maybe for a little bit you don't, and you give that up, and you make the sacrifice. You sleep just a little bit less, or even if it's like, okay, maybe there's a project that I have to do for a client. I think I can finish it in 1 hour than in 2 or something like that. And if you just put the timer on and really push yourself to finish in that hour, you have 1 extra hour that you can be spending dedicated on that passion project. So making that time is really, really important. That's what we've had to do. I mean, we did Artists for Education. We've done our Tatai's Gift children's book, and those were huge time-consuming things. But we had to schedule them in like projects and make sure that we could afford to do that, which we had to supplement in other ways. But yeah, it's possible.
So like with the time management, because it seems to kind of come back to that to some extent, you're scheduling your own time, right?
Yeah.
Crystal's not scheduling your time, how long things are going to take.
No, yeah. Right? Not really. Just to some degree, yeah. She's like, okay, because like she does the financial end of it too. So she's like, you're going to have to take on another project tonight. She's like, I'll totally take the kids. You need to sit home and work on this because we need this money, right, for this month or whatever. But yeah, it's a lot of I was smiling when you said that, because she's been the biggest proponent of it is 9 to 5. You don't go past 5 o'clock. If you need, there's obviously certain circumstances where you have to, but our kids expect you at 5. We are having dinner at 5. And so, you can work in the middle of the night later, which she still doesn't like, but if you have to, you can work in the middle of the night, but you need to figure out how to plan this out from 9 to 5. And that's been a huge thing working from home, that I had to. It's good for me because if I'm not structured, then I procrastinate a lot, and I'll get sidetracked texting somebody like, hey, how's your week going? And then I'll be like, oh, I want to check my Instagram and maybe I should post something. And I get really distracted, right? And so I start sharpening all my pencils. It's just all those things are so much easier than tackling a big problem. So we always do those first instead of sitting down. So
Lorenzo has a question. He said, and I think I know the answer to this. Do you charge hourly or per project?
Per project.
So the idea is that you still only have 24 hours in a day. And as the more experience you get, the projects possibly, you can't cut off some time. It just takes this amount of time. But as you get faster in certain things, you can make decisions quicker. You need to finish this in an hour. And sometimes done is better than perfect. And sometimes when you're doing something like that, you just have to say, this is all I'm able to do in this time frame. Right.
And yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And by saying, and you just kind of showed why hourly is dangerous, is because the better you get and the faster you get, the less you get paid. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
So, as I'm getting, like, that's why project based, and everybody knows what to expect, and and like you said, how much time it generally takes you. And sometimes you lose money, but you kind of overshoot to make sure you're covered. But yeah, per project, I don't like doing hourly.
But that's where your time, that's your light bulb went off in Boston when you saw what they were what a contractor was charging, and it was a per project, and you're like, holy moly, this is half my salary for the year, or a quarter of my salary for the year. That's what they get per hour, or
you break it down in hours to make it to feel like, but it never really like breaks down like that. But yeah, it is. If you do it per project, it's a lot safer for you. You know exactly how much you're going to make. You don't have to do that weird, like, this is how many hours it took. And you're like, wait, that many hours? Yeah.
But then there's also the side of, how much value is it worth for that client? Yeah. And so maybe the Skillshare wasn't a ton, but you had to put all that money out of getting the camera and all the filming and all the editing, which was a lot of time, but the return on investment, the ROI, was really worth it for you. Well, it's the same sort of thing with some projects. That's going to be more value for some clients. And so therefore you should charge more. But if you have some local plumber that needs you to do something, you can't charge them the same amount that you charge, but it doesn't mean you don't take on the work, or the artist education. Those are all things that how much cost or time this is going to take, and this project you're not able to do other projects, but you're willing to make that sacrifice, or you can take on another project because you're going to sacrifice time somewhere else.
Well, and each project should give you something, right? You should get something out of it, and it doesn't always have to be monetary value. It could be emotional. It could be just like you just really like the cause, or it fits within, like, you're like, it is don't tell me that it's going to be good for my portfolio. Let me know that. Like, I can say that to myself and be like, this is a great portfolio builder. Someone else tells me that, nope. Like, I'm like never going to pick up that project just because it's annoying when people say that. You're trying to get cheap work out of me. But for me, like, that's one thing I do look at. Is it going to benefit me in the terms of, like, eventually be happy doing it? Is it be something I could show off later that I want to say, like, I've done, and get a bigger client? They don't know how much I got paid for this, So I can do that type of thing. Or, maybe it is the money. Maybe it is, I play that. There's a game called Careers. It's hidden under there somewhere. It's from the 70s. Is it from I think 70s? Maybe even the 60s. It's like Life, but way better. I try to explain the game, and everybody's like, that's Life. I'm like, no, it is not. It is so much better. But it's a board game we played, and the whole thing is, like, you have to try to get, your goal is to get 100 points, and you can divvy out the 100 points between fame, fortune, and happiness. And so so your whole goal is, like, you can go certain paths through life trying to find more fame or more happiness, and you get to decide if you want 80% of it to be happiness, and another 10% being fame, and then 10% being fortune. You can divide it up that way, or you can have, like, 70% fortune. Everybody has a different goal, but I kind of do that, like, the inventory when I hear a project being pitched to me, or like I'm like, okay, how is this going to benefit me? Is it going to tackle any of these three areas for me? And if it is, then I'll sacrifice money sometimes because I know it'll have an impact somewhere else.
So I just shared a link to, I think maybe it's the name. Is it a white box?
Well, mine's orange, but there's so many versions of it. Let me look. Careers. That is the 1992 version. Yeah, that is the game. I wouldn't recommend getting that one, but yeah, that one's awful.
Okay.
The design is so cool on the original one.
Yeah, well, this one doesn't look so great, but I can imagine.
Early versions. It's
right. Okay. So more retro versions. That was the quickest one I could come up with, but I'll get another one.
Thank you. That works.
So there's so many things we didn't cover, and that I would love to pick your brain again. So maybe we can schedule another one. I want to make sure that people. So one thing is, not only are you doing projects like master classes with Dustin, just talking about the things that you've already done with him, you also have digital brushes that you created with Dustin. Yes. And again, it takes some time, and I have that link right here. And if you're listening, it's retrosupply.co/collections with an S / brave hyphen the hyphen woods. And if you probably, or there's another link right there. Is that the same thing? I'm going to put it over.
That was careers.
Oh, that was careers. Okay. Okay, great. Good to know. I will put that on there. Okay. Okay. Just putting it in my, Jason said, his coworker loved your course you did with Dustin, by the way, Brad. She said she got a lot out of it. That's awesome.
That makes me feel really good. We had a really rough start to it, and we tried to apologize, and we'll send out a more formal apology later. But we kind of took. I remember when we first started it. This is our first time doing a live webinar, live paid webinar like this, and so we ended up treating it a little bit more loose, and we were trying to be more conversational, answering everybody's questions as they came in, and we had some technical difficulties, and so we learned a ton from that one, and we had some people that weren't happy with it, and so we wanted to we felt terrible, and we're like, okay, we have to re-strategize. And so the next one I felt was way more successful, was way more organized. We answered all the questions only at the end, and we offered a ton of stuff to make sure that everybody felt like they were getting a lot out of it. So there's this whole resource page that Dustin put together, and you have templates, you got live, you got individual feedback, you got tons of recorded videos, tons of products from Retro Supply. It was just we tried to make it worth it. So I'm glad that those who were
and Bear and Bill both said it was great. Absolutely. Oh, Erica said it was great. Learned a lot.
Oh, good, Bill. Yeah, if this is the Bill I'm thinking of, he made the template for us for the little golden books. We call
nice.
The little retro books.
Yes, that is him.
Okay, good. Yeah, he made it amazing. So you look at it, and I think the hashtag. I'll find the hashtag again.
And so if you have a special link for your brushes from Retro Supply, don't you?
Yes, let me grab it.
It is not working, the one you sent me, the collection / Brave the Woods. So if you can send that to me, and then we can share it. But I'm going to share a couple other links for you guys right now.
Dustin must have messed it up. I just noticed it says it's 404 or whatever. So
yes. So one of the ways you guys can stay in touch with Brad is to subscribe to his newsletter, which you can go to this link that I just plopped on here. And I am going to make sure that I have the right link. I think I already have it up.
We send tons of free stuff on there. Every time we send something, so we send everything. The most you'll get is once every 2 weeks. You'll get a note from us, an email, and some of it will be updates on what we're doing. But a lot of it, we'll also be giving coupon codes, promo codes for our shop, which is Brave Outpost, which we're doing right now. Actually, it's Cyber Week. So we're going to do Cyber Monday, but then we started it halfway through the day. We were really late. So we're Cyber Week is 25% off everything. You use the promo code Cyber25 in our shop, you get 25% off everything for this entire week. But we had but in the newsletter, I'll be sharing tips and tricks, like videos and things that I don't share with the public. I'll be giving away free phone backgrounds, wallpapers that I've illustrated and things like that. So there's always something in there for you. It's never just sending it there and just for you to consume. There's stuff for you to actually get free. So
cool. So then you can also look and you can shop at their store, braveoutpost.com. And there it is that link. I did share the Skillshare class. I'm going to share it again. So it's just skillshare.com/profile /Brad-Woodard /9099576. All these links will be in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, they're underneath. If you're listening on iTunes or wherever you get your, it's all underneath. It's also on the page with the show notes. You can also follow him on Instagram, Dribble, and Twitter. And Instagram and Twitter are the same. It's brave_the_woods. Can you tell us why it's Brave the Woods? So why the word brave, and why being outdoors?
I thought you were going to say, why is it brave_the_woods? Because everybody freaking took it. And then I look at these accounts, they do nothing with them. Yes. On Instagram too, it's the same way. It's some personal, somebody has 25 followers or whatever. And I'm I need to just buy it off them. Anyway, yeah,
that's
Brave the Woods.
Hoping.
They probably are hoping. It's a private account. Brave the Woods was our attempt initially, because it was Brad Woodard design. And we wanted to keep, because I was going through my personal work, and then when I merged with Crystal, we wanted to do something together. I was well, I don't want it to just be my name. but also I was lazy and didn't want to change the logo right away. So it was BW still, Brave the Woods, with Brad Woodard. So that was kind of the thing. But the Brave the Woods came from like looking at we just wanted kind of a what do you call that? A call to action. So it wasn't just like when we put things on like products and stuff like that, it was more a call to action. It told a little bit more of a story than just the name of, I don't know, just a brand or like, the Woodard design or whatever it was. And so, and we weren't sure what we wanted to be called because it's illustration now. We do a lot of other things. And so we wanted something kind of all encompassing, and Brave the Woods is a nice action-based thing. We are very, adventurous, and so that kind of felt like our whole life has been just like moving and traveling, and so yeah, it just felt like it fit. And Brave the Woods is the corny definition when you look up online, like what's the meaning of your last name. The last name Woodard really means it's like guardian of the woods or something like that, guardian of the forest. And I was like, that sounds corny, but Brave the Woods sounds a whole lot better. So yeah, that's where that came from.
Okay, so real quick, so you ended up going from Austin to Boise for the reason. Tell them why.
We wanted to get back to mountains. We wanted to get closer to family, but not too close, so they couldn't surprise us. We're 8 hours away still. 5 hours, it depends. So Boise's in a really interesting spot because we have family in Utah and in Seattle and Washington. So we're right in the middle between both of those. And so we felt like it was a good spot where we kind of could still be our own selves, which is the reason why we moved all over anyways. But now our kids are wondering, like, who are my cousins? And it's like, whoa, we should probably get closer. And they love their aunts and uncles and their grandparents. So we moved in the middle between most family. And then like I said, we like the outdoors, and Austin was great, but it was always there. We didn't get the seasons, and you didn't get the mountains, and I'm a backpacker. But if you want to, like, business wise, it didn't seem like the best idea because, we had so many great connections in Austin, and people really appreciated and valued design in Austin, which made it easier to have local clients. And so Boise does not value design the same way. And that's why we're here, to fix all that. But when we came here, a big part of it was financial reasons, is we had a year that was one of our lows financially, and it was during the presidential election, which I think was an emotional low and a financial low at that point. And so it was kind of it was just a bad year. And then we realized, if you know Armin and Brioni Vitt, who do Under Consideration and Brand New, they're friends of ours in Austin. We became good friends with them. And I just remember Armin moving randomly to Indiana. Like, I was like, what? He's Bloomington, Indiana. And I was like, what was that about? It was just a huge change. He had this beautiful home in Austin. They moved to like this older home that they're fixing up. It's a nice house, but they were fixing it up, and it just felt like just a really weird next step. And so I asked him about it, and a big part of it for him was they kind of they wanted to reduce their overhead. There's a lot of other reasons for that move. I don't want to just
right.
But that was one of their things that they're thinking about. I didn't really think about that. I was like, in Austin, we've been paying like what we were paying, and like property taxes were going up. Yeah, but I didn't really make that connection to like, oh, that's another way. We didn't have to necessarily get more work. We could actually lower our overhead, and we can do the same amount of work we're doing, and but then we can dedicate that time to more things, like maybe more family time. And so I think that was a big motivator for him with his family. And so for us, we kind of a gut check for us. We're like, okay, well, why are we here? We love it here. We love Austin. We love the people here. We have so many amazing friends, but we need to be here. Like, is this the only place we could be? And so Boise was that step where we're like, it's a lot cheaper to live, but it still has like all the other things that make us happy. It was just a scary step, but now being here, we have a lot of local clients, and it's good. It's been really good.
It's gutsy, but I think that it's really important that you are looking at those things, and you actually can work anywhere, and you can still travel. And then you did this whole touring thing, which we're going to have to talk about next time, which allows you to kind of see a bunch of those people that you're friends with. And so I think that has been a really important part of you guys as a married couple, you guys as a family, so that there's still this sort of adventurous spirit. And I think you going to Boise was really, it's really bold. It's really brave. It's but you still are able to do other things. So
yes,
I think it's really fantastic.
Well,
okay. So guys, I just, thank you, Brad, so much. So, and if you want to follow him on Dribble, it's just dribble with 3bs.com/Brad W. Woodard, WOODARD. Okay. So, next week we have Alicia Colon, and she's a photographer, but she's also a paper artist. So I'm excited to have her on. And you can, okay. So you can try Audible and you can get 2 free books. You can buy the Divi theme, which all these links are in the bottom, but you can also support the show on Patreon. Thanks to Will for being my first patron. And I'm just super thankful that you guys pushed me to do this. And I feel super loved from the patrons that I've got in less than a week. So I'm very, very thankful. You can support the show, and I'll put the link at the bottom if I can find my my piece of paper here that had my links. It's just Diane Gibbs. If you search patreon.com/Diane Gibbs with one N, DIANEGIBBS. Anyway, guys, Alicia Colon next week. I only have 2 shows in December. I only usually have 1, but I'm really excited about the last show. But Alicia and I are going to be talking about self-talk. If you maybe aren't super nice to yourself sometimes, this might be a really good show, because she's done some things and really adjusted how she's talked to herself and really expanded. She's gone out on her own freelance. And I think one of the big reasons was because some of the work she did mental health wise. And I think sometimes we're really a terrible fan for ourselves, and it's really hard to go forward. And we need these other people in our lives to support us, but we also really need to change some of our inner voice. Some of us have great inner voices, but some of us maybe don't. And I want to make sure I think it's a great kind of way to end the year. So I hope you guys will join me same time, same link. You don't even have to click your email. You can just save the link. But if you want to come live, you can always sign up. You can go to rechargingyou.com and sign up. But thank you guys so much. And I will see you guys next week.